They called me a useless old woman, said I was nothing but a burden who should fade away quietly. My own children threw me aside like yesterday's garbage, and the whole town whispered behind my back about poor, pathetic Rosalind. But here's what they didn't know. This grandmother was about to find her wings, and when I came roaring back into their lives on the back of a Harley with steel in my spine and fire in my eyes, they realized they had messed with the wrong woman. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what city you're watching from, and don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. My name is Rosalind Blackthorne, and at 65, I thought my story was over. For 43 years, I'd been the perfect wife to Harold, the devoted mother to Cassandra and Phoenix, the dutiful daughter-in-law, the helpful neighbor. I baked casseroles for every funeral, organized every family gathering, and sacrificed every dream I'd ever had for the people I loved. When Harold died 2 years ago, I thought grief was the worst thing I'd ever face. I was wrong. The real heartbreak came when his will was read. Suddenly, my children showed their true colors. Cassandra, my sweet little girl who I'd raised while working 2 jobs, looked at me with cold calculation and said, "Mother, you're too old to manage the house. We think it's best if you move to that nice little senior facility on Maple Street." Phoenix nodding along, already eyeing Harold's vintage car collection. "It's for your own good, Mom. You can't handle the responsibility anymore." The house I'd turned into a home, the garden I'd tended for decades, the life I'd built, they wanted to strip it all away and warehouse me with strangers. But what came next was even worse. You see, I'd always been the peacekeeper. When Harold got frustrated with the kids, I smoothed everything over. When they struggled, I was their support. But support doesn't breed respect. It breeds entitlement. The morning after the funeral, Cassandra arrived with a real estate agent to appraise the house. Phoenix came with a moving truck for Harold's tools. When I asked to keep just his favorite hammer, Phoenix shrugged. "You'll just give it away at a garage sale anyway." That night, I realized they'd already buried me in their minds. I wasn't their mother anymore, just an obstacle between them and their inheritance. 3 days later, I found Cassandra going through my papers. When I saw the legal document she'd been hiding, my blood froze. Petition for guardianship? My own daughter was trying to have me declared mentally incompetent. "You're trying to take away my rights?" "It's practical, Mom. Phoenix and I think it's best if we handle the complicated stuff." "Get out," I said quietly. "We're not dropping this, Mother. We're doing this with or without your cooperation." After she left, I sat in my violated kitchen and tried to understand how I'd raised such heartless children. Where had I gone wrong? When had love become something they saw as weakness instead of strength? The phone rang constantly over the next few days. Cassandra had told everyone that I was struggling since Harold's death. Mrs. Henderson from next door asked if I needed help remembering to eat meals. The grocery store clerk spoke to me like a confused child. Even my doctor seemed different, asking pointed questions about my memory. The whisper campaign was working. My children had painted me as a helpless old woman who couldn't be trusted with her own life. But they made one crucial mistake. They assumed I would go quietly. That's when I decided they had messed with the wrong grandmother. The first step in my awakening came when I decided to take a real walk through town, not the careful, measured steps of an elderly woman afraid of judgment, but a confident stride with my head held high. I put on my favorite blue dress, the one Harold always said brought out my eyes, and walked straight through the center of town. I ended up at Mickey's Diner, a place Harold and I used to visit every Sunday. Mickey himself greeted me with genuine warmth, the first normal conversation I'd had in weeks. That's when I heard the rumble. Low at first, like distant thunder, but growing louder. 5 Harleys pulled into the parking lot, their riders older than I expected. Silver-haired men and women in leather jackets, moving with confidence and purpose. One man caught my attention immediately. Tall, lean, with storm gray eyes and the easy confidence of someone who'd never been told he was too old for anything. When our eyes met through the diner window, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. I felt truly seen. He approached my table with a gentle smile and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, are you all right?" "I'm fine," I lied automatically. "No, you're not," he said kindly. "Neither am I. Mind if I sit? I'm Grayson Steele." So I told the stranger everything, and when he finished, he said something that changed my life. "Want to go for a ride? Sometimes the best way to find yourself is to get lost on the open road." I stared at the stranger who just offered me something I'd never considered: adventure. Here was a man who looked at me and saw not a burden or a problem to be managed, but a person worth rescuing from her own despair. "I don't know," I whispered, glancing around the diner at the normal people living their normal lives. "Neither had I, until I did," Grayson said gently. "Sometimes the scariest thing is also the thing that saves you." I thought about my empty house, my scheming children, the legal documents waiting to strip away my independence. Then I looked at this silver-haired rebel who was offering me a glimpse of something different. "All right," I said, surprising myself. "Let's ride." As we walked toward his magnificent black motorcycle, I felt something stirring in my chest that I thought was dead forever: hope. My children thought they'd broken me, but they'd only awakened something they'd never seen before. The real Rosalind Blackthorne was about to be born. That first motorcycle ride changed my life forever. Sitting behind Grayson on his Road King, my arms wrapped around his leather jacket, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades: pure freedom. The moment we pulled onto the highway, the wind stripped away my fears, my shame, my children's cruel words. For 2 glorious hours, I wasn't anyone's mother or widow or burden. I was just Rosalind, flying down country roads I'd never seen despite living here my whole life. When we finally stopped at a scenic overlook, I was laughing and crying at the same time. "How do you feel?" Grayson asked, helping me off the bike. "Alive," I said, surprising myself with the honesty. "For the first time in years, I feel completely alive." That was the beginning of my real education. Over the following weeks, I found myself at Mickey's Diner almost daily, hoping to see the Silver Wolves again. They welcomed me like I'd always belonged. This group of supposedly over-the-hill rebels who'd refused to fade quietly into society's expectations. There was Luna Martinez, a 70-year-old former teacher whose own children had tried to force her into assisted living when she wouldn't stop traveling solo across the country. "They said I was being reckless and irresponsible," she laughed, "so I bought a bigger bike." Steele Thompson, 68, had lost his wife to cancer and found solace in the rumble of engines. "My kids think I'm having a midlife crisis," he told me. I told them, "Son, at my age, this is an end-of-life celebration." Raven Clark, 72, was a grandmother whose family had written her off as difficult because she refused to babysit full-time while they worked. They wanted a free nanny. I wanted to live my life. Guess which one of us won? These weren't dangerous outlaws. They were survivors who decided that age was just a number and freedom was a choice. They'd found each other and created something beautiful, a chosen family built on loyalty, respect, and the open road. "You ready to learn to ride your own bike?" Grayson asked one afternoon after we'd been riding together for a month. The idea terrified and thrilled me. At my age, what if I fall? "What age?" Luna called out from across the diner. "Honey, I got my license at 72. The only thing you're too old for is making excuses." So I learned. Slowly, carefully, with Grayson's patient guidance and the wolves' enthusiastic encouragement. We started in empty parking lots where I practiced balance and control on a smaller bike. The first time I stalled the engine, I wanted to quit. The 10th time, I was determined to master it. When I finally managed my first solo ride around the block, I pulled over and cried with pure joy. The freedom, the power, the absolute liberation of controlling my own direction for once, it was intoxicating. Within 2 months, I owned a gorgeous cherry red Sportsler that purred like a contented cat. I bought myself a proper leather jacket, sturdy boots, and a helmet with silver flames that matched my newly confident attitude. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the defeated old woman my children had dismissed. I saw Rosalind Blackthorne, strong, fearless, ready for whatever came next. But I wasn't just building a new life with the Silver Wolves. I was quietly building my case against Cassandra and Phoenix. My lawyer, Marcus Webb, had been busy too. While my children spread rumors about my declining mental state, we were documenting everything. Every lie they told their friends, every legal maneuver they attempted, every piece of evidence that proved their real motivation wasn't concern. It was greed. "Your daughter hired a private investigator to follow you," Marcus told me during one of our meetings. She's trying to prove you're incompetent by documenting reckless behavior. I smiled, thinking of my last ride with the wolves through the mountains. Let her try. I've never been more clear-headed in my life. The investigation Marcus ordered revealed the truth about their sudden interest in my affairs. Phoenix had gambling debts that were drowning him. Cassandra's husband's business was failing spectacularly. They needed my inheritance to save their own skins, and they were willing to destroy my reputation to get it. Meanwhile, something else was blooming alongside my newfound independence. What had started as friendship with Grayson was deepening into something I thought was lost to me forever. Love, real love, not the comfortable routine Harold and I had settled into. Grayson made me laugh until my sides hurt. He challenged me to be braver, to ride further, to dream bigger. And when he looked at me, I saw desire and admiration, not the dutiful affection of a long marriage, but the electric connection of two souls recognizing each other. "You know I'm falling in love with you," he said one evening as we watched the sunset from a hilltop overlooking the valley. "At our age," I teased, though my heart was racing. "Especially at our age," he said seriously. "We know how precious time is. We know what real partnership looks like because we've lived without it." My transformation didn't go unnoticed in town. People who had whispered about poor, confused Rosalind were suddenly seeing me roar through Main Street on my Sportsler, silver hair streaming behind me like a battle flag. The mixture of shock and grudging respect on their faces was delicious. Even Mrs. Henderson, who offered to help me remember meals, stopped me one afternoon. "Rosalind, you look different," she said, clearly struggling for words. "I feel different, Eleanor. I feel like myself for the first time in decades." But my children remained obliviously confident in their plan. They assumed their legal maneuvering would break me down, make me desperate enough to accept their generous offer of managed care while they controlled my money. Little did they know, I was planning to show them exactly who they'd thrown away.
6 months with the Silver Wolves changed me completely. Every day I grew stronger, more confident, more like the woman I'd been before. 43 years of putting everyone else first had worn me down to nothing. The legal battle with my children was heating up, but now I had Marcus Webb fighting for me and something they'd never expected: evidence. You see, while they were spreading rumors about my mental state, I was documenting everything, every lie they told, every manipulation, every attempt to isolate me from my friends and community. Marcus had been brilliant, hiring a private investigator who'd uncovered the truth about their financial motivations. Phoenix had gambling debts that were crushing him. Cassandra's husband's business was failing, and they desperately needed my inheritance to save themselves from bankruptcy. Their concern for my mental health was nothing but greed wrapped in fake compassion. But I wanted more than just legal victory. I wanted them to see exactly what they'd thrown away. The Silver Wolves became my true family. These people who'd been written off by their own children, dismissed by society, forgotten by the world they'd helped build. We found each other and created something beautiful. We rode together every weekend, traveled to places I'd never dared to visit alone, lived with a freedom and purpose I'd never known existed. And through it all, there was Grayson. What had started as friendship deepened into love. Real love, not the comfortable routine Harold and I had settled into. He made me laugh, challenged me to be braver, and when he looked at me, I saw desire and admiration. "You know I'm falling in love with you," he said one evening. "At our age?" I teased, though my heart was racing. "Especially at our age," he said seriously. "We know how precious time is." My transformation didn't go unnoticed. People who'd whispered about my confusion were suddenly seeing me roar through Main Street on my Sportster, silver hair streaming behind me. Mrs. Henderson actually flagged me down one afternoon. "Rosalind, you look different." "I feel like myself again," I told her. But the real test was coming. My children had been noticeably absent during my transformation. They'd assumed their legal maneuvers would break me, make me desperate enough to accept their generous offer to let me live quietly in a senior facility while they managed my affairs. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Marcus called me on a Tuesday morning with the news I'd been hoping for. "Rosalind, we won. The judge not only dismissed their petition for guardianship, but he's recommending they be investigated for elder abuse and fraud." I should have felt triumphant, But victory in court was only the beginning. The real revenge would be showing them and this entire town exactly who Rosalind Blackthorn really was. That's when I learned about Cassandra's birthday party. She was throwing a big society event at the country club, trying to maintain appearances despite her husband's failing business. She'd told everyone I was too unwell to attend, painting herself as the devoted daughter dealing with a difficult situation. Perfect. It was time to make my grand entrance. I spent weeks planning with the wolves. We would arrive during the height of the party when all of Cassandra's social climbing friends would be there to witness my return from the dead, so to speak. "You sure about this, darling?" Grayson asked as we prepared for the big night. "Once you walk through those doors, there's no going back to being invisible." I smiled, adjusting my new leather jacket, deep crimson to match my bike with silver studs that caught a light. I've been invisible long enough. It's time they remembered who they're dealing with. The night of the party, 8 motorcycles rumbled through the quiet streets towards the country club. I led the convoy on my Sportster, Grayson beside me on his Road King, our chosen family behind us like a silver-haired army of rebellion. As we pulled into the valet parking area, every head turned. The valets looked terrified, the arriving guests shocked, and I felt more powerful than I had in my entire life. But what happened next made them realize their biggest mistake. I pulled off my helmet and shook out my silver hair, letting it catch the evening light. The transformation was complete. Gone was the broken woman they'd tried to warehouse, replaced by someone they'd never seen before. The real Rosalind Blackthorn, fierce and unafraid. Grayson took my hand as we approached the country club entrance. The doorman, who'd known me for 20 years as Harold's quiet wife, didn't recognize me at first. When he did, his jaw dropped. "Good evening, James," I said with a smile. "Beautiful night for a party, don't you think?" Inside, the party was in full swing. The room fell silent as our group entered. 8 leather-clad rebels walking into their pristine world. I spotted Cassandra across the room in her designer dress. She was telling her friends about her difficult mother situation when she saw me. The champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. "Hello, darling," I called across the room. "I hope you don't mind me crashing your party. I know you told everyone I was too ill to attend, but as you can see, I'm feeling quite well." Phoenix appeared at Cassandra's side, equally stunned. Around them, their society friends stared at me, the supposedly senile mother in full leather, holding hands with a silver-haired man surrounded by a motorcycle club. "Mother," Cassandra managed to croak. "What are you? How did I what? Dear, learn to live again? Find love? Discover that I'm not the helpless old woman you painted me as? It's amazing what happens when you stop believing other people's lies about yourself." Marcus Webb stepped forward with his folder of documents. "Good evening. I'm Marcus Webb, Mrs. Blackthorn's attorney. I have some documents that might interest everyone here." But I held up my hand. This was my moment, and I was going to savor every second of it.
"Not yet, Marcus," I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. "Let me introduce everyone to the woman my children tried so hard to erase." I walked deeper into the party, the silver wolves flanking me like an honor guard. Every step I took in my leather boots echoed in the marble-floored ballroom. The society crowd parted before me, their champagne glasses frozen halfway to their lips, their carefully composed expressions replaced by naked fascination. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, my voice strong and clear, "many of you have been hearing stories about me these past months, about how I've been struggling, showing signs of confusion, becoming a burden on my devoted children. Tonight, I want to set the record straight." Cassandra's face had gone from pale to green. Phoenix looked like he might be sick. Around them, their friends, the same people who'd been hearing their sob stories about their difficult mother, were beginning to put the pieces together. "My name is Rosalind Blackthorn, and I am 66 years old," I continued, my voice gaining strength with every word. 6 months ago, I was exactly what my children claimed, a broken woman who'd forgotten who she was. But then, something wonderful happened. I remembered. I gestured to Grayson, who stepped forward with a smile that could melt steel. I remembered that love isn't something that ends at a certain age. I remembered that adventure isn't reserved for the young. And I remembered that respect isn't something you give up just because your children decide you're inconvenient. The whispers started then, excited, scandalized whispers from people who were finally seeing the truth behind months of carefully crafted lies. Mrs. Pemberton, one of Cassandra's closest friends, stepped forward with wide eyes. "Rosalind, is that really you? But Cassandra said you were in assisted living, that you couldn't manage on your own anymore." Did she now? I turned to look at my daughter, who was now backing toward the exit like a cornered animal. "What else did she tell you, Patricia?" She said you'd been having episodes, memory problems, that you tried to drive to Harold's office even though he'd been dead for 2 years. The crowd gasped. That lie was particularly cruel, and everyone knew it. Interesting, I mused, because I haven't driven Harold's old sedan anywhere, but I have been driving this. I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo of my cherry red Sportster. I passed my motorcycle license test on the first try. The instructor said I had excellent reflexes and judgment for someone my age. More gasps, more whispers. I was enjoying this immensely. "Mother," Cassandra finally found her voice, though it came out as a strangled croak. "You don't understand. We were worried about you. You thought you could steal my inheritance." I cut her off, my voice sharp as a blade. "Marcus, now would be perfect." My lawyer stepped forward, opening his folder with theatrical precision. "Ladies and gentlemen, I represent Mrs. Blackthorne in what we discovered to be a case of attempted elder abuse and fraud." The room was so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. "The real story," Marcus continued, "is that Phoenix Blackthorne has accumulated gambling debts exceeding $200,000. Cassandra's husband's construction business is on the verge of bankruptcy. They needed Mrs. Blackthorne's inheritance to solve their financial problems, so they created a fiction about her mental state to justify taking control of her assets." Phoenix had gone completely white. Cassandra looked like she might faint. "Furthermore," Marcus said, clearly enjoying his moment, "they hired a private investigator to follow Mrs. Blackthorne, hoping to document reckless behavior that would support their case. Instead, the investigator documented Mrs. Blackthorne learning new skills, forming healthy relationships, and demonstrating remarkable clarity and independence." I smiled at the crowd, many of whom were now looking at my children with disgust. These were people who prided themselves on appearances, on doing the right thing, at least publicly. Being exposed as elder abusers at their own party was social suicide. We just wanted what was best for you," Phoenix finally managed to say. Grayson stepped up beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. "Son," he said in his gravelly voice, "the best thing for your mother was exactly what she found. Freedom, love, and people who see her worth. You tried to take that away from her. That says everything about who you are and nothing about who she is." I looked around the room at all these people who'd whispered about me, pitied me, written me off as another sad story of aging and decline. Now they were seeing something entirely different. A love story, a comeback, a woman who refused to go quietly into the night they'd planned for her. "I want everyone here to know something," I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Age doesn't make you weak unless you let it. Being dismissed doesn't make you worthless unless you believe it. And family isn't about blood. It's about who stands by you when the world tries to write you off." I gestured to the Silver Wolves, my chosen family, who'd been standing silently behind me like guardian angels in leather. These people saw something in me that my children missed. They saw strength where my children saw weakness, potential where my children saw burden, love where my children saw liability. The transformation in the room was complete. What had started as Cassandra's birthday celebration had become my victory lap, and everyone knew it. As I stood there in my leather jacket, surrounded by my Silver Wolves family, watching my children's carefully constructed lies crumble around them, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades, pure, unadulterated triumph. But the night wasn't over yet. Mrs. Pemberton, still staring at me in amazement, turned to Cassandra with ice in her voice. "So when you asked me to contribute to that memory care facility fund for your poor mother, you were actually trying to finance your husband's failing business?" Cassandra's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Around the room, other society ladies were having similar realizations. These women prided themselves on their charitable work, their community service. Being tricked into funding a fraud was unforgivable in their world. "And the sympathy dinners," added Mrs. Wellington, another pillar of their social circle. "All those evenings where you came to my house crying about how difficult it was to care for your declining mother. We all felt so sorry for you." Phoenix tried to slip toward the exit, but Steele Thompson, all 250 pounds of him, somehow materialized in front of the door. "Leaving so soon, son?" he asked with a smile that wasn't entirely friendly. "I think," I said, savoring every word, "that my children owe everyone here an apology, not just for lying about me, but for manipulating your kindness and sympathy for their own gain." The crowd murmured agreement. These people might be snobs, but they had standards about honesty, at least when it came to being lied to themselves. Cassandra finally found her voice, but it came out as a whimper. "Mother, please, we can work this out privately. You don't need to humiliate us like this." "Humiliate you?" I laughed, and it wasn't a kind sound. "Sweetheart, you humiliated yourselves. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth." Grayson squeezed my hand gently. "You want to tell them the rest, darling?" I nodded, turning back to the crowd. "There's something else you should all know. 3 weeks ago, Grayson asked me to marry him." The gasps were audible. In their world, widows my age were supposed to fade gracefully into the background, not find new love and passion. "I said yes," I continued, holding up my left hand to show the beautiful ring, not a traditional diamond, but a stunning emerald surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like fire. "I'm planning a small ceremony next month, just close friends and family." I paused meaningfully. Real family, the kind that actually loves and supports you. Phoenix finally exploded. "This is ridiculous, Mother. You've known this man for 6 months. You're making a huge mistake." "Am I?" I asked calmly. "Let's see. In 6 months, Grayson has taught me to ride a motorcycle, shown me parts of the country I'd never seen, introduced me to people who value me for who I am, and loved me exactly as I am. In 43 years of marriage to your father, I never experienced anything close to this kind of partnership." I turned to address the crowd again. Harold was a good man, and I loved him. But what Grayson and I have is something I never knew existed. It's built on respect, shared adventure, and genuine affection. Not habit, not obligation, not convenience. "But you're 66, Cassandra protested desperately. "Exactly," I said with a smile. "I'm 66 years old, and I'm finally learning what it means to be truly alive. Some people find that at 26, some at 46. I found it at 66. Better late than never, don't you think?" The crowd was eating this up. A real-life romance, a family betrayal, a dramatic confrontation. It was better than their favorite soap opera. Luna stepped forward from our group. "If I may," she said in her clear teacher's voice, "I've known Rosalind for 6 months now, and I've watched her bloom like a flower that was kept in the dark too long. She's one of the sharpest, bravest, most vibrant women I've ever met. Her children's loss is our gain." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Even people who barely knew me were nodding along. "The thing about getting older," I said, looking directly at my children, "is that you stop caring what other people think you should do and start caring about what makes you happy. You two spent so much energy trying to control my life that you forgot to live your own. Maybe it's time you learn that lesson." Marcus cleared his throat. "If I may add one more thing, Mrs. Blackthorne has also decided to update her will. Given recent events, she's choosing to leave her estate to organizations that support elder rights and abuse prevention. Her children are, of course, welcome to contest this decision in court." The look of horror on Phoenix and Cassandra's faces was priceless. Not only had they failed to steal my money, but their actions had cost them their inheritance entirely. "Mother, you can't be serious," Phoenix said, his voice breaking. "Oh, I'm very serious," I replied. "You wanted to declare me mentally incompetent to steal my money? Well, I'm mentally competent enough to decide that money should go to people who will use it to help others, not gamble it away or prop up failing businesses." I looked around the room one more time, taking in the faces of people who would never look at me or my children the same way again. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for witnessing my resurrection," I said with a theatrical bow. "And remember, it's never too late to start over, fall in love, or show the world exactly who you really are." Grayson offered me his arm. "Ready to ride into the sunset, Mrs. Soon-to-be Steele?" I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in decades. "Lead the way, handsome." As we walked toward the exit, the silver wolves flanking us like an honor guard, I heard the buzz of excited conversation behind us. This party would be talked about for years. Cassandra and Phoenix would never live it down. And me, I was riding off into the best chapter of my life. Little did anyone know, the story was just getting started.
1 month later, I married Grayson Steele in the most beautiful ceremony I could have ever imagined. It wasn't held in a stuffy church or expensive ballroom. Instead, we exchanged vows at sunset on a hilltop overlooking the valley where we'd shared our first kiss. The Silver Wolves were our wedding party, all of us dressed in our finest leather and denim, and the local minister, a young man who rode his own Harley to the ceremony, performed the service. I wore a stunning white leather jacket over a flowing cream dress, with my silver hair crowned by a simple circlet of wildflowers that Luna had made for me. Grayson looked magnificent in black leather and silver, his storm gray eyes bright with unshed tears as I walked toward him. The guest list was small, but perfect. Mickey from the diner came, along with several of the townspeople who'd watched my transformation with growing respect. Mrs. Henderson even attended, bringing a beautiful handmade quilt as a wedding gift and apologizing once again for believing my children's lives. Cassandra and Phoenix were notably absent. They tried to reconcile with me after the country club disaster, but their apologies were hollow, focused more on what they'd lost than on what they'd done to me. When I told them they weren't welcome at my wedding, Phoenix accused me of being vindictive. "I'm not vindictive," I told him calmly. "I'm selective. This wedding is about celebrating love and new beginnings with people who genuinely care about my happiness. You've proven you don't qualify." But the person who surprised me most was Marcus Webb, my lawyer, who'd become a genuine friend through our legal battle. He walked me down the aisle in place of the father I'd lost years ago, and when he placed my hand in Grayson's, he whispered, "Harold would be proud of the woman you've become." The ceremony itself was simple but profound. Grayson and I had written our own vows, and when it came time for him to speak, his voice carried across the hilltop like a prayer. "Rosalind," he said, holding both my hands, "6 months ago, I saw a woman who'd forgotten she was extraordinary. Today, I'm marrying the woman who remembered. You've taught me that love isn't about finding someone to complete you. It's about finding someone who inspires you to become the best version of yourself." When it was my turn, I looked out at our small gathering of true friends and chosen family, then back at this incredible man who'd saved me from a life of quiet desperation. "Grayson, you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever, myself. You showed me that strength isn't about enduring whatever life throws at you. It's about having the courage to throw something back. You didn't rescue me from my old life. You gave me the tools to rescue myself. And now I want to spend whatever years I have left showing you the same kind of love and partnership you've shown me." There wasn't a dry eye on that hilltop, including my own. After the ceremony, we celebrated with a barbecue and bonfire under the stars. It was everything I'd never known I wanted. Authentic, joyful, surrounded by people who saw our love as an inspiration. "So, what's next for Mr. and Mrs. Steele?" Luna asked later. Grayson and I exchanged a look. "We're taking our honeymoon on the road, 3 months cross-country, hitting every national park we can find." "At your age," Steele teased. "Especially at your age," we said in unison. But there was more. Over the past month, we'd been contacted by other older adults who felt trapped, dismissed by their families. We were starting something new. The Silver Revolution, a support network for people like us who refuse to accept that turning 65 means turning invisible.
Think of it, I said. How many people our age are sitting in their houses right now, thinking their best years are behind them? We're going to show them a different way. As we clinked glasses, I thought about how different my life was from 7 months ago. Then I'd been a broken woman preparing to fade quietly away. Now I was a newlywed revolutionary with a motorcycle, a mission, and more energy than I had in decades. The next morning, as Grayson and I loaded our bikes for the first day of our honeymoon adventure, I got an unexpected visitor. Cassandra's car pulled into my driveway, and she got out looking haggard and desperate. "Mother, please," she said, not even greeting Grayson. "We need to talk." "About what?" I asked, not unkindly, but not warmly either. "About forgiveness, about family, about trying to rebuild what we destroyed." I studied my daughter's face, looking for genuine remorse instead of self-interest. What I saw was complicated. Some real regret mixed with a hefty dose of panic about their social standing and financial future. "Cassandra," I said finally, "forgiveness isn't something you can demand or negotiate for. It's something that has to be earned. And rebuilding requires acknowledging what was broken and taking responsibility for breaking it." She nodded eagerly. I know, we made mistakes." "Mistakes. Forgetting to call on my birthday is a mistake. Trying to have me declared mentally incompetent to steal my inheritance isn't a mistake. It's a betrayal of everything a family should be." Tears started streaming down her face, and for a moment I saw my little girl again instead of the cold, calculating woman who tried to destroy me. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Mom. We were scared and stupid and greedy, and we almost lost the most important person in our lives." It was the first real apology I had heard from either of my children, and it cracked something open in my chest. But forgiveness, I'd learned, wasn't the same as reconciliation. "I accept your apology," I said gently, "but accepting an apology doesn't erase the consequences of what you did. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal overnight. Respect, once lost, has to be earned back piece by piece." "How?" she asked desperately. "How do we earn it back?" I looked at Grayson, who nodded encouragingly, then back at my daughter. "You start by becoming the kind of people who deserve it." 3 months on the road with Grayson taught me more about myself than 66 years of staying in one place ever had. We rode through the Rocky Mountains, where I learned that fear and exhilaration could coexist beautifully as we navigated winding mountain passes. We camped under desert stars in Arizona, where the silence was so profound it felt like a prayer. We explored the redwood forests of California, where trees older than civilizations reminded me that longevity was about more than just surviving. It was about growing stronger and more magnificent with each passing year. But the most meaningful part of our journey wasn't the destinations, it was the people we met along the way. In a small diner in Colorado, we encountered Margaret, a 72-year-old woman whose son had moved her from her beloved farm to a sterile apartment complex near his home. She was withering away, convinced her useful life was over. By the time we left town 3 days later, Margaret had joined a hiking club, enrolled in a pottery class, and was planning to visit us at our next Silver Revolution meetup. In Texas, we met Robert, whose daughter had taken away his car keys for his own safety after one minor fender bender. He hadn't left his house in 6 months. Grayson spent an afternoon teaching him basic motorcycle maintenance, and by evening, Robert was test riding a used Yamaha and grinning like a teenager. In New Mexico, we stayed with Elena, a widow whose children lived across the country and called once a month out of obligation. She'd been existing, not living, until she heard our story through a friend. When we arrived, she'd already started planning a community garden and a weekly potluck for other forgotten seniors in her neighborhood. Each person we met added another layer to my understanding of what the Silver Revolution could become. It wasn't just about motorcycles or dramatic confrontations with ungrateful children. It was about refusing to accept invisibility, about claiming your right to growth and adventure and purpose, regardless of your age. Our social media following grew organically. I started an Instagram account, Roslyn Rides, sharing photos and stories from our journey. Messages poured in from inspired older adults worldwide. "I'm 68 and just signed up for salsa dancing lessons because of you," wrote Maria from Phoenix. I told my controlling daughter exactly what I thought of her suggestions for my life. "Thank you for showing me I still have a voice," posted William from Boston. But the message that moved me most came from a woman named Dorothy in Illinois. "My daughter was trying to get me declared incompetent too. I hired a lawyer and fought back. I won. Thank you for showing me I wasn't alone and I wasn't crazy. When we returned home, the Silver Revolution had grown beyond our imagination. Luna had organized meetups that expanded from 8 to over 50 people. Marcus Webb offered free legal consultations to older adults facing similar situations to mine. It's an epidemic, Marcus told me. Adult children trying to seize control of parents' finances under the guise of concern. What happened to you wasn't unique. Our movement gained national attention. I spoke at senior centers and appeared on talk shows. The message was always the same. Age is not a disease, and family doesn't give you the right to control another person's life. But the victory that meant the most to me happened 6 months after our return, when Phoenix showed up at my door. Not demanding or desperate this time, but genuinely humble. Mom, he said, his voice shaky, I've been going to therapy and Gamblers Anonymous. I wanted you to know that I understand now. What we did to you was about our problems, not yours. You were never the problem. We were. I studied my son's face, looking for the manipulation I'd grown accustomed to. What I saw instead was something I hadn't seen in years, genuine remorse mixed with what looked like the beginning of self-respect. How are the debts? I asked quietly. I'm working 2 jobs to pay them off. It'll take years, but I'm doing it myself. No shortcuts, no schemes, no trying to take what isn't mine. He looked down at his hands. I also wanted to apologize to Grayson. He was right about everything he said that night at the country club. Grayson, who'd been listening from the kitchen, came out and extended his hand to Phoenix. Takes courage to face your mistakes, son. That's the first step towards becoming someone your mother can be proud of. Phoenix's eyes filled with tears. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you were right to fight us, and I'm proud of what you've built. It wasn't complete reconciliation. That would take time and consistent action, but it was a beginning. Cassandra took longer to come around. Her husband's business had failed. They'd lost their house, and her social standing never recovered from the country club incident. When she finally reached out through Luna, I agreed to meet, but on my terms, at the Silver Wolves Clubhouse with my chosen family. It was time to see if my children could accept the woman I'd become, or if they were still mourning the doormat they had lost. The meeting was scheduled for Saturday afternoon. As I prepared, putting on my favorite leather jacket and boots, I thought about how much had changed since that first day when I'd met Grayson at Mickey's Diner. Then I'd been a broken woman preparing to disappear. Now I was a leader of a movement that was changing lives across the country. You're ready for this? Grayson asked, adjusting his own jacket. More than ready, I said, checking my reflection one last time. The woman looking back at me was confident, powerful, unafraid. It's time for Cassandra to meet the real Rosalind Blackthorne. As we rode toward the clubhouse, I felt the familiar thrill of freedom that came with every motorcycle journey. Whatever happened in the next few hours, I was no longer the woman who could be manipulated or controlled. I had found my strength, my voice, and my purpose. The Silver Revolution taught me that revenge isn't just about making people pay for what they've done to you. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply refusing to be the victim they expected you to remain. And I was done being anyone's victim, forever.
The Silver Wolves Clubhouse had never looked more perfect. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the pictures on the walls. Photos of our adventures, our rides, our chosen family, celebrating life at every age. Luna had arranged chairs in a circle, and Marcus sat with his familiar folder of documents, though I suspected we wouldn't need them today. Cassandra arrived exactly on time, which surprised me. She'd always been fashionably late to everything, but today she walked in with the punctuality of someone who knew she was asking for a favor, not granting one. She looked different. Older, yes, but also humbled in a way I'd never seen before. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect manicure. She wore simple jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look like the daughter I remembered from decades ago. "Mom," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." I gestured to the empty chair across from me. "Sit down, Cassandra. Let's talk." She looked around the room, taking in the Silver Wolves insignia, the motorcycle magazines, the photos of Grayson and me on various adventures. This wasn't the world she'd known me to inhabit, and I could see her struggling to reconcile the mother she thought she'd controlled with the woman sitting across from her now. I've been thinking about what you said at the wedding, about becoming the kind of person who deserves forgiveness. I've been trying to figure out what that means. And what did you figure out? She took a shaky breath. That I don't even know who I am when I'm not trying to control everything around me. I spent so much energy trying to manage your life, your money, your future, that I forgot to live my own life. It was a start, but words were easy. What are you doing about it? I'm in therapy, real therapy, not just going through the motions. I'm working at a nonprofit that helps seniors with legal advocacy. The pay is terrible, but she paused, looking directly at me for the first time. But I'm learning about the damage people like me do to people like you. That caught my attention. People like you. Adult children who think they know better than their parents, who use concern as an excuse for control, who mistake manipulation for love. Her voice cracked slightly. I see it every day now, Mom. I see myself in the stories of abuse and control, and I hate what I see. Grayson leaned forward. What's the hardest part about the work? Cassandra turned to him, and I was surprised to see genuine respect in her expression. Realizing that every client reminds me of what I almost did to my mother, every story of financial abuse, every case of adult children trying to steal their parents' independence, it's like looking in a mirror. She turned back to me. I understand now why you fought so hard. It wasn't about the money, was it? It was about the right to be yourself. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness yet, but something like understanding. Tell me about the work you're doing. For the next hour, Cassandra told us about her work helping seniors facing abuse from their own families. Cases of adult children stealing cars, credit cards, homes. Elderly people isolated because their children deemed activities too risky. There was this one woman, Eleanor, 84, sharp as a tack, but her son had her declared incompetent because she wanted to travel to Europe alone. We fought it and won. Now she's planning that trip and invited me to go with her. I looked at this woman, my daughter, but also a stranger, slowly becoming someone I could recognize again. Why are you telling me this? Because your story didn't just change your life, it changed mine too. She pulled out a tablet showing a video of me from a talk show. I've watched this 50 times. You look so strong, so proud. I realized I'd never seen you look like that in my entire life. She closed the tablet. I robbed you of that strength for years, didn't I? Every time I made you feel like a burden, dismissed your opinions, made you feel your only value was serving everyone else. What do you want from me? I asked quietly. Nothing, she said, and I believed her. I want to earn the right to be in your life again, but I know that might take years. I just wanted you to know I understand why you had to fight us, and I'm grateful you won. I'm not ready to be your mother again, but I might be willing to see if we can be friends. Real friends, who respect each other's choices and boundaries. How do I do that? I smiled genuinely for the first time in over a year. You start by asking what I want, instead of telling me what you think I need. What do you want, Mom? Coffee next week. Just coffee. No agenda. We'll see if we can remember how to enjoy each other's company. 6 months later, I'm writing this from Wyoming during my second cross-country adventure with Grayson.
The Silver Revolution now has chapters in 37 states. My relationship with Cassandra is slowly healing. She's kept her word about respecting my autonomy. But the real victory isn't in their apologies. It's in the woman I see in the mirror each morning, strong, confident, unafraid, surrounded by people who love her exactly as she is. I learned that the best revenge isn't making people pay. It's refusing to stay diminished. It's never too late to discover who you really are when you stop being who everyone expects you to be. To any grandmother feeling invisible or pushed aside, your story isn't over until you say it is. You have more power than you know to write the ending you deserve. At 67, I'm just getting started. Don't forget to rate this story 0 to 10 in the comments and tell me what city you're watching from. The Silver Revolution might be coming your way next. Remember, it's never too late to find your wings.